Lifespan Theory, Erikson. Overview of post-Freudian theory. The person we introduced in opening Bernate, of course, was Erikson, the person who coined the term identity crisis. Erikson had no college degree of any kind, but this lack of formal training did not prevent him from gaining word fame in an express variety of fields, including psychoanalysis, anthropology, psychohistory, and education. His post-Freudian theory extended infantile developmental stages into adolescence. Adult and old age, Erikson suggested that on each stage a specific psychosocial struggle contributes to the formation of personality. From adolescence on, the struggle takes the form of an identity crisis, a turning point in one's life that may either strengthen or weaken personality. Erikson postulated 8 stages of psychosocial development through which people progress, although he differed from Freud in his emphasis on the ego and on social influence. His theory is an extension, not a refutation of Freudian psychoanalysis. Biography of Erikson, born June 15, 1902 in southern Germany and was brought up by his mother and stepfather, but he remained uncertain of the true identity of his biological father. To discover his niche in life, Erikson ventured away from home during late adolescence, adopting the life of a wandering artist and poet. After nearly 7 years of drifting and searching, he returned home confused, exhausted, depressed, and unable to sketch or paint. He received a letter from his friend Peter Bloss, inviting him to teach children in a new school in Vienna. One of the founders in the school was Anna Freud, who became not only Erikson's employer, but the psychoanalysis as well. While in Vienna, Erikson met and with Anna Freud's permission, married Joan Serson, a Canadian-born dancer, artist and teacher who had also undergone psychoanalysis. With her psychoanalytic background and her facility with the English language, she became a valuable editor and occasional co-author of Erikson books. The Erikson had 4 children: sons Kai, John, Niel, and daughter Sue. Kai and Sue pursued important professional careers, but John, who shares his father's experience as a wandering artist, worked as a laborer and never felt emotionally close to his parents. Erikson's search for the identity took him through some difficult experiences during his adult development stage. According to Erikson, his stage requires a person to take care of children, products, and ideas that he or she had generated. On this issue, Erikson was deficient in meeting his own standards. He failed to take good care of his son Niel, who was born with Down syndrome at the hospital while Joan was still under sedations. Erikson agreed to place Niel in an institution. Although his mother's lie has distressed him greatly, he failed to understand that he lied about Niel might later distress his another children, and deceiving his children the way he did, Erikson violated 2 of his own principles. When Erikson was born in Germany in 1902, his name was Erikson Salomonsen. After his mother married Theodor Homburger, Erikson individual took his father's name. At age 18, he left home to pursue the life of wandering artist and to search for self-identity. He gave up that life of teach young children. In Vienna, where he met Anna Freud, still searching for his personal identity. He was psychoanalyzed by Miss Freud, an experience that allowed him to become a psychoanalyst, changed his name of Erikson, and took a position at the Harvard Medical School. Later, he taught at Yale, the University of California at the Bear Valley, and several another university. He died in 1994, a month short of his 92nd birthday. The ego and post-Freudian theory. Erikson 1968 identified three interrelated aspects of ego: the body, ego, the ego ideal, and ego identity. The body ego refers to experiences with our body, a way of seeing our physical self as different from another people. The ego ideal represents the image we have of ourselves in comparison with established ideal. It is responsible for our being satisfied or dissatisfied, not only with our physical self but with our entire personal identity. Ego identity is an image we have of ourselves and variety of social roles we play. Although adolescence is ordinary the time when these three components are changing most rapidly, alterations in body ego ideal, and ego identity can and do take place at any stage of life. One of Erikson's chief contributions to personality theory was he emphasized on ego rather than ID functions. According to Erikson, the ego is the center of personality and is responsible for a unified sense of self. It consists of three interrelated phases: the body ego, the ego ideal, and ego identity. Society's influence. Erikson emphasized on social and historical factor was in contrast with Freud's mostly biological viewpoints. To Erikson, the ego exists as potential at birth, but it must emerge from within a cultural environment. The COG placed great value on generosity. The Erikson believed that reassurance resulting from unlimited breastfeeding lays at foundations for the virtue of generosity. In European American societies, orality and anality are often considered undesirable traits or neurotic symptoms. Erikson 1963, however, argued that orality among the Sioux hunters and anality among the Yurok fishermen are adapting characteristics that help both of individual and the culture. Erikson 1968-1974 argued that historically all tribe or nation, including the United States, that have developed the called pseudospices, that is an illusions, preparated and perpetuated perpetuated by a particular society that is somehow chosen to be the human species. The ego develops within a given society and its influence by the child rearing and practices in another culture costumes. All cultures and nations develop a pseudo species or fictional notions that they are superior on another cultures. Epigenetic principles. Erikson believed that the ego is developed throughout the various stages of the according to the epigenetic principles. A term borrowed from the embryology, epigenetic development implies a step-by-step growth of fetal organs. The embryo does not begin as a completely formed little person within to merely expand its structures and form. Rather, it develops or should develop according to the predetermined rate and in a fixed sequence. If the eyes, liver, or another organs not developed during the critical period of their development, then will never attain properly maturity. In similar fashion, the ego follows the path of epigenetic development, with each stage developing at its proper time. The stage emerged from and it's built upon a previous stage, but it does not replace that early stage. Erikson, 1968, described the epigenetic principle by saying that anything that grows has a group plan, and that out of this group plan, the part arrays each part of having its time of special ascendancy until all parts have arisen to form a functioning, who more succinctly, epigenesis means that one characteristic develops on top of another in space time and time. The ego develops according to the epigenetic principles, that is, it grows according to genetically established rate and in a fixed sequence. Stage of a psychosocial development. First, growth takes a place according to epigenetic principle. The tia is one of component part of a race out of another and its own time of accidency, but it does not entirely replace earlier components. Second, in in every stage of life there is an interactions of opposites, that is conflict between a syntonic elements and disruptive elements. Third, and each stage that conflict between the syntonic element produce an ego quality or the ego strength, which Erikson referred to an basic strength. Fourth, too little basic strength at any one stage results in a cure pathology or fourth stage. For example, a child who does not acquire sufficient hope during infancy will develop the antithesis or opposite of hope, namely withdrawal. Fifth, although Erikson refers to his 8 stages as psychosocial stages, he never lost sight of the biological aspect of human development. 6. Even in earlier stage do not cause later personality development. Ego identity is shaped by a multiplicity of conflicts and even past, present, and anticipated. 7. During each stage, but especially from adolescent forward personality, developed in is characteristics by identity crisis, which Erikson 1968 called a turning point, a crucial period of increased vulnerability, the heightened potential. Each of the 8 stages of development is marked by conflict between asyntonic elements in syntonic disrupting element which produce a basic strength or ego quality. Also from adolescence on each stage is characterized by an identity crisis of turning point which may produce either adapting or maladaptive adjustment. The first psychosocial stage is infancy. Period encompassing approximately the first year of life and paralleling Freud or oral phase of development. However, Erikson model adopt a broader focus than Freud oral stage, which was concerned as almost exclusive with the mount. To Erikson, 1989, infancy is a time of incorporation, with infants taking in not only through their mouth but through their various sense organs as well. Infancy then is marked by a oral sensory psychosexual mood. The psychosocial crisis of basic trust versus basic mistrust, and the basic strength of hope. Infancy, Erikson views as infancy, the first year of life, was similar to Freud's concept of the oral stage, except the Erikson expanded the notions of incorporations behind the mouth of include sense organs such as the eyes and ears. The psychosexual mode of infancy is oral sensory, which is characterized by both receiving and accepting. The psychosocial crisis of infancy is basic trust versus basic mistrust. Oral sensory mode. Erikson expanded a view of infancy. It expressed in the term oral sensory, a phrase that includes infant's principal psychosexual mode of adapting. The oral sensory stage is characterized by two models of incorporation, receiving and accepting that is given. The second mode of incorporation, however, implies a social context. Infants not must get, but they also must get someone else to give. In getting another people to give, they learn to trust or mistrust another people. Trust setting up the psychosocial crisis of infancy, namely basic trust versus basic mistrust. Erikson's expanded view of infancy is expressed in term oral sensory, a phrase that includes infant principal psychosexual mode of adapting. The oral sensory stage is characterized by two modes of incorporation, receiving and accepting that is given. Infant can receive even he absence of another people. Infants not only must get, but they also must get someone else to give. This early training is interpersonal relations. Basic trust versus basic mistrust. Infant must significant interpersonal relations are with their primary caregiver or ordinarily their mother. If they are realized that their mother will provide food regularly, then they begin to learn basic trust. If they consistently hear the pleasant rhythmic voice of mother, then they develop more basic trust. If they can rely on an existing visual environment, they solidify basic trust even more. Basic trust is ordinarily syntonic and basic mistrust dystonic. Nevertheless, infants must develop both attitudes. Too much trust makes them gullible and vulnerable to the vagaries of the world, whereas too little trust leads to frustrations, anger, hostility, cynicism, or depression. All babies who have survived have been fed and otherwise cared for and therefore have some reason to trust. Erikson believed that some ratio of trust and mistrust is critical to people's ability to adapt. Erikson 8 stages of psychosocial development. Between birth and 18 months of age. During this stage, the infant either comes to view of another people and himself or herself as a trustworthy or comes to develop a fundamental distrust of his or her environment. The growth of basic trust, considered essential for the later development of self-esteem and healthy interpersonal relationship, is attributed to a primary caregiver who is responsively attuned to the infant individual need while conveying the quality of trustworthiness, whereas a growth of basic mistrust and attributed to neglect, lack of love, or inconsistent treatment. The child must experience, but trust is mistrust to know how to truly trust. Hope, the basic strength of infancy. Hope emerged from the conflict between basic trust and basic mistrust within an antithetical relationship between trust and mistrust. People cannot develop hope. Infant must experience anger, pain in this form, discomfort as well as the alleviations of this unpleasant condition. Infants do not develop sufficient hope during infancy. They will demonstrate the antithesis or the opposite of hope. Withdrawal, the core pathology or infancy. With little to hope for, they will retreat from the outside world and begin the journey toward serious psychological disturbance. Hope emerged from the conflict between basic trust and basic mistrust. By having both painful and pleasurable experiences, infants learn to accept that future distress will meet with satisfactory outcome. Early childhood. The second psychosocial stage is early childhood, a period of paralleling Freud and anal stage is encompassing appropriately the second and third year of life. Again, some differences exist between the views of Freud and Erikson. Once again, Erikson took a broader view. To him, young children receive plays not only from mastering in their muscles, but also from mastering another body functions, such as urinating, walking, throwing, holding, and so on. In addition, the children develop a sense of control over their interpersonal environment, experiencing doubt and shame as a children learn that many their attempts at autonomy are unsuccessful. Early childhood, defined as a period from the birth of 8 years old, is a time of remarkable growth with the brain developed at its peak. During this stage, children are highly influenced by environment and the people that surround them. Anal urethral muscular mode. During the second year of life, children's primary psychosexual adjustment is an anal urethral muscular mode. At this time, children learn to control their body, especially in relations to loneliness and mobility. Early childhood is more than a time of toilet training. It is also come to learn, walk, run, hug parents, and hold on to the toys and another object. With each of their activities, young children are likely to display some stubborn tendencies. Early childhood is a time of contradictions, a time of stubborn rebellions in meek compliance, a time of impulsive self-explosions, and compulsive deviance, a time of loving cooperation and hateful resistance. Autonomy versus shame in doubt. If the children is a time of self-expression in autonomy, then is also a time for shame in doubt. As the children adopt Berlin express their anal urethral muscular mode, they are likely to find a culture that attempt to inhibit some of their self-expression. The conflict between the autonomy and shame in doubt becomes the major psychosocial crisis of early childhood. Children who develop two-titled autonomy will have difficulties in subsequent stages, lacking in basic strength of later stages. Conversely, of children do not develop basic trust during infancy, their, then their then their attempts to gain control of their anal, urethral, and muscular organs during early childhood will be met with a strong sense of shame and doubt, setting up and a serious psychosocial crisis. Shame is feeling of self-consciousness of not being certain. The feeling that the something remains hidden and cannot be seen. Both shame and doubt are cytonic qualities in both growth of the basic mistrust that was established in the infancy. While the basic strength of early childhood, this step is the beginning of free will, the willpower, but only a beginning. Matured willpower and a significant measure of free will receive for a later stage of development, but they originate in the rudimentary will that emerge during early childhood. Toilet training often epitomizes the conflict of wills between adult and child, but willful expression is not limited to this area. The basic conflict during early childhood is between the child's striving for autonomy and the parents' attempt to control the children through the use of shame and doubt. Children develop will only when their environment allow them some self-expressions and their control to expenditures and another muscles. When their experience result is too much shame and doubt, children do not adequately develop this second important basic strength. Thank you.